The spill happened in slow motion. Red wine arced through the air like blood spatter at a crime scene, splashing across Huisu's pristine gray suit. The crystal glass shattered. Lisa Hicks dropped to her knees, trembling hands hovering over the shards. But it was her eyes, sharp, calculating, already mapping every exit in the room, that caught Sun Lin's attention. The grand hall held its breath. They thought she was nothing. They thought she was invisible. They were wrong. The Su family gala wasn't a party. It was a stage. Crystal chandeliers couldn't hide what these men truly were. Smugglers. Enforcers. Empire builders. The Korean Mafia didn't rise to power through mercy. They built their throne on calculated violence and buried secrets. And now the patriarch, Huisu, the old tiger, who'd survived 3 assassination attempts in 2 wars, stood drenched in wine, waiting to signal her execution. Lisa Jenkins knew what it meant to be underestimated. At 29, she'd spent 3 years perfecting invisibility. A forensic accountant turned fugitive, she'd disappeared into the margins of high society, serving champagne to men who could make her vanish with a whisper. Until tonight, until one accident made her the most dangerous person in the room. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm responding to everyone. Click subscribe, like this video. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want me to miss them. Let's begin. Lisa had learned to hold a tray at exactly 47 degrees, not 45. Not 50. 47 degrees kept the champagne flutes from sliding, while maintaining the illusion of effortless grace. 3 years of serving the ultra-wealthy had taught her that precision wasn't just professional, it was survival. The Su family gala was different from the usual circuit. The Vanderbilt wedding last month had been tense with old money politics. The tech billionaire's yacht party in Monaco had reeked of nouveau riche desperation. But this was a room full of men who'd killed people. Not metaphorically, not through corporate negligence. Actually pulled triggers, signed death warrants, watched bodies disappear into the Pacific. She could feel it in the way they moved, how they never fully turned their backs to doorways, how their eyes tracked every server's hands, every waiter's approach. These weren't men who worried about stock prices. They worried about successors and betrayals, and whether their food had been poisoned. Lisa adjusted the tray on her left palm, her right hand hovering beneath it in perfect support position. 12 champagne flutes, each filled to exactly 2/3. She'd counted them 3 times. In her old life, she'd counted different things. Wire transfers. Offshore accounts. The paper trail of $847 million that disappeared from shipping manifests over 18 months. That's what had made her run. She'd been the youngest forensic accountant at Morrison & Fitch, brought in to audit a routine merger between 2 international shipping companies. Routine until she'd noticed the discrepancies. Small at first, a container here, a customs declaration there. But Lisa had always seen patterns where others saw noise. It was her gift and her curse. By week 3, she'd mapped the entire scheme. By week 4, she'd realized the shipping companies were fronts for something much larger. By week 5, her apartment had been broken into, her files copied, and her mentor had been found dead in an apparent suicide. She'd disappeared the next day. New name, new city, new life. She'd chosen service work deliberately. People never looked at servers. They were furniture with pulse. Backdrop to important conversations, invisible witnesses to 1,000 crimes they'd never report because they'd never actually been seen. Champagne, sir? She kept her voice neutral, her eyes down, approaching a cluster of men in tailored suits who were speaking rapid Korean. One glanced at her hand, checking for tremors, for poison, for anything suspicious, before taking a glass. She moved on. The grand ballroom of the Su estate could have housed a small village. Marble floors polished to mirror shine reflected the glow of 3 massive chandeliers, each one probably worth more than every paycheck Lisa would earn in her lifetime. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens where stone dragons guarded koi ponds. The air smelled of expensive cologne, rare orchids, and something else. Something sharper. Fear, maybe, or anticipation. Huisu held court near the far wall, surrounded by men who laughed too loud at his jokes and stood just slightly too far back. The distance of respect earned through terror. The patriarch was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 5'7", but he carried himself like he was carved from granite. They called him the old tiger, and Lisa understood why. Even at 73, there was something predatory in how he watched the room. His son, Sun Lin, was easier to spot. Taller, younger, colder. Where Huisu radiated the warmth of a man who enjoyed his power, Sun Lin wore his authority like a second skin, essential, invisible, absolute. He stood to his father's left, saying nothing, missing nothing. Lisa had learned to identify the truly dangerous ones. They were the quiet ones. The watchers. She'd served at 12 Sioux family events in the past 8 months. Always professional. Always invisible. Always careful to look at no one too long. Remember nothing too well. Exist in that perfect state of helpful amnesia that the wealthy paid for. Her feet ached. The heels were killing her. 2 inches of punishment she'd been standing in for 6 hours already. But she couldn't adjust her stance, couldn't shift her weight noticeably. Any break in the performance could draw attention, and attention in a room like this was death. A server bumped her shoulder passing. Lisa steadied her tray automatically, years of muscle memory keeping the glasses level. She glanced at the woman, "Am I son?" one of the newer hires, and caught something in her expression. Satisfaction? Malice? The thought didn't have time to form. "Am I son's foot?" hooked Lisa's ankle with surgical precision. The world tilted. Lisa's hands flew up, trying to save the tray, trying to regain balance, trying to do anything except what happened next. 12 champagne flutes launched into the air, and every single one found Huisu's gray suit. Time fractured into shards as sharp as the crystal exploding against marble. Lisa hit the ground hard, knees cracking against the floor with a pain that barely registered. Her hands were already moving, not to break her fall, but to calculate. 3 exits, 2 blocked by security, 1 behind the kitchen, 70 feet away through a crowd that had frozen into statues. Her mind catalogued escape routes, even as her body betrayed her with trembling that she couldn't control. The champagne, not wine, champagne, her panicked brain corrected uselessly, had painted Huisu's chest in a starburst pattern of spreading wetness. 12 glasses worth. The liquid dripped from his lapels like the aftermath of an execution, each drop hitting the marble with a sound that echoed in the terrible silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Lisa's vision narrowed to a tunnel. This was it. 3 years of running, of hiding, of perfecting invisibility, ended because of a jealous coworker's petty revenge. She'd survived discovering an international crime syndicate only to die because she'd been too good at her job, made someone else look inadequate by comparison. The old tiger stood motionless, liquid streaming down the front of his suit. His face was unreadable. Not angry. Not shocked. Just still. The kind of stillness that preceded violence, the way silence preceded thunder. Lisa tried to form words. Apologies. Explanations. Please. But her throat had closed around them. She stayed on her knees, surrounded by glass and spreading champagne, and waited for the order. It was Sun Lin who spoke first. "Everyone remain where you are." His voice cut through the hall like a blade through silk, quiet, precise, absolute. He didn't raise his tone. He didn't need to. Men with guns on their hips and blood on their hands went rigid at the sound. Lisa's eyes tracked him without meaning to. Another calculation her body made without permission. Sun Lin moved with the fluid grace of something predatory, crossing the distance between his father and the kneeling server in 4 measured steps. His shoes appeared in her lowered field of vision. Italian leather, probably custom, not a speck of champagne on them. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Lisa raised her head slowly, expecting to see rage. Instead, she found something worse. Curiosity. Sun Lin's dark eyes studied her with the clinical detachment of a surgeon examining a particularly interesting specimen. His face could have been carved from ice, beautiful, cold, utterly without mercy. "You have hands that tremble," he said softly, loud enough only for the closest observers to hear, but eyes that already mapped the exits. Her heart stopped. He'd seen it. Seen through the performance of the terrified servant to the calculating mind beneath. In that moment, Lisa understood she'd made a fatal mistake. Not the spill that had been M.I. Sun's doing, but the response. She'd reacted like someone trained to survive, not like a simple server having an accident. Sun Lin tilted his head slightly, still watching her with that unnerving focus. "What's your name?" "Lisa Hicks, sir." Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. Another mistake. A truly terrified woman would be sobbing by now. "Lisa Hicks." He tasted the name like he was testing it for lies. "How long have you worked for our events?" 8 months, sir." "And in 8 months, you've never once made a mistake." It wasn't a question. He'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed. These men hadn't survived by overlooking details. Huisu finally moved, drawing a handkerchief from his pocket with deliberate slowness. He dabbed at his jacket, examining the damage with the same expression he might use to inspect a mildly interesting insect. When he spoke, his voice carried the gravel of decades of cigarettes and shouted orders. "Sun Lin, handle this." 3 words. A death sentence wrapped in paternal delegation. Sun Lin's expression didn't change. "Take her to the cold room." The cold room. Lisa's knowledge of Korean organized crime suddenly felt like a curse. She knew what that meant. The soundproofed chambers, where problems were handled quietly. Where bodies were kept before disposal. Where people went in and didn't come out. 2 men materialized from the crowd, security. Their faces blank masks of professional violence. Hands gripped her arms, hauling her to her feet. Glass crunched under her shoes. Her legs barely held her weight. Wait. The word escaped before she could stop it. Sun Lin raised one hand. The guards froze. You want to say something? His tone suggested this was a test, that her next words might be the difference between a quick death and a slow one. Lisa's forensic mind screamed at her to stay silent, to play the victim, to maintain the act. But Sun Lin had already seen through it. The performance was over. It wasn't an accident, she said quietly. Someone tripped me. Check the security footage. You'll see. Sun Lin's eyes flickered with something that might have been approval, or might have been amusement at a mouse that tried to bargain with a cat. Then you'll have time to prove it. He nodded to the guards. Take her. They dragged her toward the service entrance. The last thing Lisa saw before the doors closed was Huisu, still standing in his ruined suit, watching her disappear with the expression of a man who'd just seen something unexpected. And in a room full of killers, unexpected was the most dangerous thing you could be. The cold room wasn't what Lisa expected. No meat hooks, no drain in the center of the floor, no tools arranged on a stainless steel table like some nightmare dentist's office. Just concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, and a metal folding chair in the center of an otherwise empty space. The temperature was exactly what the name promised. Cold enough to see her breath, cold enough to make her hands shake even harder than fear already accomplished. They left her there for 17 minutes. She counted. Old habits from her accounting days, when time was billable and every minute had value. Now time just meant prolonging the inevitable. The door opened without warning. Sun Lin entered alone, carrying a leather case in one hand and a bottle in the other. He set both on the concrete floor with careful precision, then straightened and studied her the way someone might examine a puzzle that had suddenly become interesting. Do you know what's in this bottle? He indicated the champagne, still sealed, label pristine. Lisa's mind raced. Wrong answer here meant death. But which answer was wrong? Champagne, sir. Champagne, he repeated, almost thoughtful. Dom Perignon, 2008. Retail value approximately $400. My father has a case of it shipped monthly from a specific vineyard in France. He trusts 3 people with his liquor supply. His sommelier, of 20 years, his personal physician, and me. He crouched down, opening the leather case with a soft click. Inside wasn't the expected gun or knife. Instead, Lisa saw glass vials, litmus strips, a small burner, rubber gloves, and what looked like a portable spectrophotometer, the kind used in field testing for chemical analysis. I studied chemistry at Oxford before my father called me home. Sun Lin's voice remained conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. I found it elegant. The way molecules combine, react, destroy each other. Very predictable. Unlike people. He stood, lifted the bottle, and held it toward her. Tell me why my father isn't dead yet. The question hung in the cold air between them. Lisa's forensic training kicked in automatically, her mind already assembling puzzle pieces she hadn't consciously registered. The way Huisu had been standing near the bar. The specific timing of my son's accident. The fact that Sun Lin had brought testing equipment instead of weapons. You think the champagne was poisoned? The words came out before she could calculate whether honesty was survival or suicide. Sun Lin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest. I think someone tried to poison my father tonight. I think they chose a method that would appear natural. Perhaps a heart attack, a stroke, something plausible for a man his age. I think they timed it carefully. He paused, still holding the bottle toward her. And I think you accidentally saved his life by drenching him in evidence before he could drink it. Lisa's hands were still shaking as she took the bottle. The glass was cold, heavy, with expensive death. Why tell me this? Why not just test it yourself? Because I want to know who you really are, Lisa Hicks. He settled against the wall, arms crossed, watching her with that unnerving focus. A server for 8 months, perfect record, invisible in every way. Then tonight, you map escape routes in a crisis, speak with confidence when you should be begging, and now you're analyzing a potential murder plot, instead of claiming ignorance. He tilted his head slightly. So I'm offering you a choice. Prove you're simply an intelligent woman who got caught in unfortunate circumstances. Help me identify what's in that bottle, and perhaps you walk out of here. Or maintain whatever fiction you've been living, and I'll assume you're part of the plot. Lisa looked down at the chemistry kit, then back at Sun Lin. 3 years of hiding, of being invisible, of running from her own expertise. All of it collapsing in a cold room beneath a mansion full of killers. But Sun Lin had given her an opening, whether he realized it or not. He'd offered her a test she could pass. I'll need to open it. She knelt beside the case, hands steadier now that she had a problem to solve. Problems had solutions. Problems had logic. If it's been tampered with, We should see evidence in the seal or cork. Go ahead. She worked methodically, old skills flooding back, examining the bottle under the fluorescent light, checking for needle marks in the cork, testing the seal's integrity. Sun Lin watched in silence as she carefully opened it, poured small amounts into vials, began running basic chemical tests with the supplies he'd provided. The litmus paper changed color immediately. Wrong color. The spectrophotometer confirmed what her instincts already knew. Aconite, Lisa said quietly, still staring at the readings. Wolfsbane, colorless, tasteless in champagne. Causes cardiac arrest that mimics natural heart failure. Metabolizes quickly enough that a standard autopsy might miss it unless they specifically test for it. She looked up at Sun Lin. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. The dosage here would have killed him within 20 minutes of consumption. Sun Lin's expression remained neutral, but his next words carried weight that made the cold room feel even colder. Then you've just made yourself either invaluable or a liability. He pushed off the wall, moving toward her with predatory grace. The question is which? He extended his hand, not to harm her, but to help her stand. There's someone who didn't belong in the kitchen tonight. Tell me about them. Lisa's breath caught. He already knew she'd seen something. Somehow, he'd calculated that she'd been observant enough, analytical enough, to have noticed the anomaly. A man, she heard herself say, dressed as service staff, but his hands were wrong. Clean. No burns, no cuts. Not a kitchen worker's hands. Sun Lin smiled. It was the most terrifying thing she'd seen all night. Good. Now prove you can identify him, before he activates whatever backup plan is already in motion. Lisa's mind scrolled backwards through the evening, like security footage on rewind. 6 hours of carrying trays, navigating crowds, existing in the margins of important conversations. 6 hours of details her brain had cataloged without conscious effort, because that's what forensic accountants did. They noticed anomalies. He was near the service entrance to the kitchen, around 7:15. She spoke slowly, pulling the memory into focus. White coat, like medical staff. Stethoscope around his neck. I remember thinking it was odd, because the Su family keeps their personal physician upstairs, not in the kitchen areas. Sun Lin's phone was already out, fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. Height? Age? Distinguishing features? 5'10", maybe 5'11". Asian? Probably Korean. Late 30s, early 40s. Clean-shaven. But it was his hands I noticed most. Lisa closed her eyes, forcing the details to sharpen. He was holding a medical bag, black leather. But his grip was wrong. Too tight. Like he was carrying something heavy that he didn't want to drop, or something valuable he couldn't risk losing. Sun Lin's voice had taken on edge. He was already moving toward the door, gesturing for her to follow. The mansion went into lockdown the moment you were brought down here. No one enters. No one leaves. If he's still here, we'll find him. The corridor outside the cold room stretched into dimness, concrete giving way to the polished service passages that connected the mansion's working areas to its showpieces. Lisa had navigated these halls dozens of times, but never like this. Never with armed guards at every intersection. Never with the weight of a murder plot pressing down on every decision. Sun Lin moved like he owned the shadows, and perhaps he did. 2 security personnel fell into step behind them, without needing instruction, their presence both protection and threat. Lisa understood the calculation. She was useful now, but useful things became disposable once their utility expired. The kitchen staff have been sequestered in the East Wing. Sun Lin spoke without looking back at her. 43 people total. We're reviewing security footage now, but the cameras in the kitchen have convenient blind spots. Someone knew where to stand. Someone with access to your security protocols. Lisa's forensic mind was already building the framework. This wasn't opportunistic. Whoever did this has been planning it for weeks, maybe months. They knew your father's preferences, his routines, which bottles he'd drink from. They emerged into a monitoring room that looked like it belonged in a government facility. 12 screens displayed various angles of the mansion. The grand hall where guests still waited under guard. The kitchen frozen mid-service. Hallways and stairwells and rooms Lisa had never seen. A technician looked up as they entered, his face pale. Sir, we have a problem. Sun Lin's expression didn't change. Show me. The technician pulled up footage from earlier in the evening. Time-stamped 7:12 p.m. Lisa watched herself on screen, carrying a tray through the kitchen's service entrance. And there, in the corner of the frame, partially obscured by the industrial refrigerator, a figure in a white coat. Freeze it. Sun Lin leaned closer. Can you enhance? Already did. The image sharpened slightly, revealing the man's profile. But here's the problem. Watch what happens at 7:47. The timestamp jumped forward. The same corridor. The same angle. But when the figure in the white coat walked past the camera again, something was different. No medical bag. No stethoscope. Just a man in a white coat walking with empty hands and casual confidence. He ditched the bag. Lisa's pulse quickened. That means the poison was already delivered by that point. But he's still here, still in costume. Why? Because poisoning Huisu was only part of the plan. Sun Lin's voice carried the certainty of someone who understood violence as a language. He's waiting to confirm the kill, or to trigger the backup method if the primary fails. He turned to face Lisa directly, and she saw something new in his expression. Not trust, that would take more than chemical analysis and sharp observation. But recognition. The acknowledgement that she'd stopped being a victim and become something else. You worked 8 months in this house. You know the spaces we don't monitor closely. The blind spots. The places where someone could hide, or wait, or watch. His next words weren't a request. Where would you position yourself if you needed to observe without being seen? Lisa thought about it. Months of being invisible had taught her where the cameras didn't reach, where the security patrols didn't bother checking, where someone could exist in the gaps between attention. The conservatory. The answer came with sudden certainty. Eastern wing, 2nd floor. It's used for storage between events. Old furniture, decorations. Multiple exits. Sight lines to the main hall. And the camera coverage is sporadic, because nothing valuable is kept there. Sun Lin was already moving, speaking into his phone in rapid Korean. The security team mobilized with military efficiency, but he held up a hand before they could rush forward. If we flood the area, he'll know we're coming. He could have contingencies, hostages, explosives, anything. He looked at Lisa with an expression that was almost sympathetic. You're gonna walk through that conservatory like you're looking for extra serving trays. You're still just the clumsy server, escaping scrutiny, trying to make yourself useful. And you're gonna tell me if he's there. Lisa's hands had stopped shaking sometime in the last 10 minutes. She wasn't sure when, and if he recognizes me as a threat, then you'll discover whether your mind is faster than his trigger finger. Sun Lin handed her a small communication device, the kind that looked like a hearing aid. But I suspect you've been surviving impossible situations for longer than just tonight. His eyes held a question he didn't voice. He knew. Not everything, but enough. Enough to understand that Lisa Hicks was running from something, that invisibility had been strategy rather than circumstance. She took the device, fitted it into her ear canal. Through it, she heard Sun Lin's voice clearly even though he turned away. Find him. And Lisa? He paused at the door. Don't make me regret choosing the chemistry kit instead of the gun. The conservatory mission would have to wait. Sun Lin's phone vibrated against his palm, and whatever message appeared there made his expression shift, not into concern, but into something more complex. Obligation, perhaps? Or the weight of filial duty that ran deeper than blood in families like his. My father wants to see you. He said it like a fact, not an invitation. Now, Lisa's stomach dropped. Huisu, the old tiger himself, the man she'd drenched in poisoned champagne, the patriarch who'd stood motionless while his son sentenced her to the cold room. Nothing good came from private audiences with men who'd built empires on calculated violence. I thought we were. What my father wants, he gets. Sun Lin's tone left no room for negotiation. The hunt can wait 10 minutes. They ascended through corridors that grew progressively more opulent. Service passages giving way to hallways lined with art that probably cost more than Lisa's entire former life. Guards stood at intervals, their presence a reminder that luxury and danger were two sides of the same coin in this world. Huisu waited in a private study that smelled of expensive tobacco and older money. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held volumes in Korean, English, and what looked like classical Chinese. A single desk dominated the room, its surface clear except for a photograph in a silver frame. A young Huisu with a man Lisa didn't recognize, both smiling in a way that suggested genuine friendship rather than business obligation. The old tiger had changed out of his ruined suit into traditional Korean attire, the handbook lending him an air of timelessness. He stood by the window, looking out over the estate grounds, and didn't turn when they entered. Leave us. His voice carried the gravel of decades, but underneath ran a current of something Lisa couldn't quite identify. Not anger, not gratitude. Something older. Sun Lin hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but enough to betray concern. Father, your investigation can spare me 10 minutes with the woman who saved my life. Huisu turned then, his eyes settling on Lisa with an intensity that made her understand how this man had survived 73 years in a profession where most died young. Go. The door closed with a soft click. Lisa stood in the center of the room, hyper-aware of her ruined uniform, her aching feet, the absurdity of being alone with a man whose organization had probably disappeared more people than she could count. Huisu moved to his desk, picked up the photograph, studied it for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had softened into something almost human. What was your father's name? The question hit like a physical blow. Lisa's breath caught, her carefully constructed identity fracturing in an instant. I don't. I don't understand. Your real name isn't Lisa Hicks. He set the photograph down gently, turning to face her fully. The identity is good. I had my people check while you were being tested. 3 years old, layered properly, expensive. The kind of background that costs $50,000, and a connection to someone who knows how to bury the truth. Her hands had started shaking again. Sir, your father's name was Marcus Williams. Huisu said it with certainty, watching her face for confirmation. He worked as a civilian contractor for the U.S. military in South Korea, late 1990s. Logistics and supply chain management. Lisa felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Her father who died when she was 12, who she barely remembered, except in fragments. His laugh, his careful hands, the way he taught her to see patterns in chaos. How do you? Because 26 years ago your father discovered that someone was stealing military supplies from the base at Camp Humphreys and selling them to North Korean operatives. Huisu's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Do you know what he did with that information? She shook her head, unable to speak. He brought it to me. Huisu moved to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of whiskey with steady hands. Not to his superiors. Not to military intelligence. To me, because he'd figured out that the theft operation ran deeper than a few corrupt officers. It went up the chain, involved people who would have killed him, and destroyed the evidence before letting it surface. He offered her one of the glasses. Lisa took it automatically, her mind reeling. Your father was brilliant, strategic thinker. He understood that sometimes the law is a luxury you can't afford, that sometimes the only way to stop monsters is to employ other monsters. Huisu sipped his whiskey, savoring it. He gave me names, routes, schedules. In exchange, I made sure the operation collapsed without him being connected to it. Saved his life, and possibly prevented a significant intelligence breach that would have cost American lives. Lisa stared at the man who'd just rewritten her understanding of her own history. Why are you telling me this? Because you are your father's daughter. Huisu's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. I saw it the moment Sun Lin showed me the security footage. The way you fell but immediately calculated. The way your fear didn't stop your mind from working. Marcus Williams once told me that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's someone who can see the pattern while everyone else sees chaos. He raised his glass slightly, a gesture that felt ceremonial. Your father saved my life once by trusting me with dangerous information. Tonight you saved my life by accident. But I don't believe in accidents. His eyes held hers with uncomfortable intensity. I believe you were sent here for a reason. Call it fate, call it karma, call it whatever helps you sleep. But you have a choice now. Walk away with your false identity intact, or stay and finish what you started. Help my son find the traitor, and I will give you what your father never asked for. What's that? Protection. The word hung in the air like a promise and a threat, simultaneously. From whatever you've been running from for 3 years. The Sioux family pays its debts, Lisa Williams. And we've owed your family for more than 2 decades. He finished his whiskey in one smooth motion. Now go help my son hunt. The conservatory would have to wait again. Sometimes the best hiding places were in plain sight. Sun Lin listened to her revised plan with the stillness of a predator calculating angles. They stood in a service corridor just outside the grand hall, the muted sounds of anxious guests filtering through the walls like the humming of trapped insects. You want to go back out there? His tone suggested he was deciding whether this was brilliant or suicidal. Into a room full of people who watched you get dragged away to be executed. The man in the white coat ditched his disguise because he needs to blend in now. Lisa's mind was working at full speed, the fog of fear burned away by Huisu's revelation. He's not hiding in empty rooms. He's hiding among the guests. Watching. Waiting to see if the poison worked, or if he needs to trigger the backup plan. And you think he'll reveal himself if you return? I think he'll have to react. I'm a variable he didn't account for. She met Sun Lin's eyes directly, a gesture that 3 years of invisibility had trained her to avoid. I was supposed to be nobody, just another servant who made a mistake and disappeared. But I'm still here, still alive, which means something went wrong with his plan. He'll need to assess whether I'm a threat. Sun Lin studied her for a long moment, then reached into his jacket and withdrew something small and metallic. A pin, shaped like a crane in flight, the kind of decorative piece that wealthy women wore on expensive dresses. He held it out to her. Camera. Audio. Real-time feed to the security room. His fingers brushed hers as she took it. If he makes a move, we'll see it. But Lisa, if he decides you're a threat worth eliminating immediately, my men won't reach you before he does. I know. She pinned the crane to her uniform, just above her heart. Poetic, in a morbid way. But forensic accounting taught me that people reveal themselves in their reactions. Whoever planned this is in that room right now. And they're either panicking that Huisu is still alive, or they're calm because they have a contingency. Either way, they'll give themselves away. Sun Lin's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. You've done this before. Not this exactly, but something close. Walked into a room full of people who wanted you dead. It wasn't a question, so Lisa didn't answer it. Instead, she smoothed her ruined uniform, still stained with champagne, still marked with the evidence of her accident, and straightened her spine. 3 years of practice had taught her how to disappear. Now she needed to remember how to be seen. The grand hall had transformed in her absence. What had been a celebration now felt like a wake. Guests clustered in small groups, their conversations muted, eyes darting toward the exits that remained blocked by Su family security. The air tasted of expensive perfume, mixing with sweat and mounting anxiety. These were people accustomed to power, and finding themselves trapped, had stripped away their usual veneer of control. Lisa entered through the main service door, carrying a tray of fresh champagne glasses. A different bottle, Sun Lin had assured her, triple-tested and clean. Her hands trembled slightly, but that was expected. That was the performance. The server who'd nearly been killed, returning to duty because she was powerless to do otherwise. The room's attention found her like a spotlight. Conversations stuttered. Someone whispered in Korean. A woman in a pearl necklace actually gasped. Lisa kept her eyes down, her movements mechanical. She was furniture again. Furniture that happened to be at the center of an attempted assassination, but furniture nonetheless. She approached the first cluster of guests, 3 men in suits discussing something in low tones that cut off when she neared. Champagne? Her voice came out small, uncertain. Perfect. One of them took a glass without looking at her. The other 2 declined with barely perceptible headshakes. Lisa moved on, her eyes cataloging everything her peripheral vision could capture. Body language. Micro-expressions. The tells that separated genuine confusion from practiced performance. Through the communications device hidden in her ear, Sun Lin's voice provided context. Group near the east window. The tall one in the navy suit is Park Jin-woo, shipping executive. Known associate. The woman beside him is his wife. Lisa adjusted her route, drifting toward the east windows. Park Jin-woo accepted a glass, his hand steady, his expression bored. Not panicking. Not particularly interested. His wife refused with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, but the tension there read as social anxiety rather than guilt. Clear, Lisa murmured, barely moving her lips. She continued her circuit of the room, each approach a data point. Some guests avoided her entirely, as if proximity to a person marked for death might be contagious. Others watched her with curiosity or pity. A few looked actively uncomfortable, but uncomfortable because of the situation's awkwardness, not because they were hiding murder. Then she saw him. Near the bar, partially obscured by a marble column, stood a man she recognized from earlier service rotations. Dr. Kang, she remembered, one of Huisu's business partners, pharmaceutical distribution. Mid-40s, distinguished gray at his temples, always polite when accepting drinks. He stood alone now, holding a glass he wasn't drinking, his eyes fixed on the doorway where Huisu would eventually need to reappear. But it wasn't his attention that triggered Lisa's recognition. It was his hands. They were perfectly still. No nervous fidgeting, no adjustment of his tie or cufflinks, none of the small movements that betrayed stress. In a room full of trapped, anxious people, Dr. Kang radiated the calm of someone waiting for a schedule to be kept. Lisa angled toward him, her heart rate spiking. Through her earpiece, Sun Lin's voice sharpened. What do you see? She couldn't respond directly. Instead, she approached Dr. Kang with her tray, close enough to hear him when his phone buzzed softly. Close enough to see him glance at the screen and frown, just slightly, just for a second, before his expression smoothed back into professional neutrality. Champagne, Dr. Kang. Lisa kept her voice steady, her eyes appropriately downcast. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something flickered across his face. Calculation, recognition that she shouldn't still be alive. No thank you. His smile was perfect. His eyes were dead. I'm watching my intake this evening. Lisa moved away, her pulse thundering in her ears. She'd found him. The man in the white coat had changed into expensive tailoring, but he couldn't change the fundamental truth that he was waiting for someone to die. Northeast corner, she whispered. Dr. Kang, pharmaceutical distribution. He's checking his phone and watching for Huisu. Sun Lin's response came swift and cold. Confirmed. He has access to medical facilities. Means and opportunity. Stay away from him. But Dr. Kang was already moving, his calm evaporating as he walked with sudden purpose toward the restroom corridor. Not fleeing. Adjusting. Activating whatever backup plan he'd prepared for exactly this scenario. Lisa made a choice that was probably going to get her killed. She followed him. Lisa counted to 10 before following Dr. Kang down the restroom corridor, giving him enough lead to feel secure, but not enough to disappear. Sun Lin's voice crackled urgently in her ear. What the hell are you doing? I said stay away from him. She ignored the order, her forensic mind already assembling the trap. In her old life, she'd learned that criminals made mistakes when they thought they were cornered. They revealed contingencies, exposed networks, made desperate moves that unraveled entire conspiracies. Dr. Kang needed to believe his plan was failing so spectacularly that he had no choice but to activate every backup he possessed. The corridor was empty, except for the two of them. Marble floors absorbed the sound of her footsteps, but Dr. Kang heard her anyway. He stopped, turned with the controlled precision of someone deciding whether to run or eliminate a problem. "You shouldn't be here." His voice had lost its polite veneer. Now it carried the flat affect of someone accustomed to making bodies disappear. Lisa's hands were shaking again. Real fear this time, not performance. But she'd committed to the play, and backing down now would only confirm she was a threat worth killing immediately. "I know what you did." She kept her voice low, urgent, as if sharing a confession rather than making an accusation. "The champagne. The poison. I saw you in the kitchen." Dr. Kang's expression didn't change, but his weight shifted almost imperceptibly onto the balls of his feet. Fighter's stance. Lisa's analytical mind noted it clinically, while her survival instinct screamed at her to run. "I don't know what you're talking about." He glanced past her, checking for witnesses, calculating angles. "You're confused, traumatized by the evening's events." "Aconite," Lisa said quietly, watching his micro-expressions. "Wolfsbane. Metabolizes quickly. Mimics cardiac arrest. You put it in the bottle at 7:15, replaced the seal perfectly. Professional work." The confirmation flickered across his face, surprised that she knew the specifics, followed immediately by the cold calculation of someone deciding how to handle a complication. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Lisa talked faster, pouring information at him like champagne from a bottle, each revelation designed to make him believe the entire operation was compromised beyond salvation. "They found the bottle. Sun Lin has a chemistry background. Did you know that? Oxford educated. He ran the tests himself. They know about the aconite. They're reviewing all the security footage right now, tracking everyone who entered the kitchen." She let desperation creep into her voice, made herself sound like she was trying to broker survival. "They know it's someone with medical access. Someone who could source the poison without raising flags." Dr. Kang's hand stilled on his pocket. She could see him processing, recalculating. If they'd already identified the method and narrowed the suspect pool, his window for escape was closing. But more importantly, if they knew about the aconite, they'd be watching for backup methods. "There are 43 people locked in this mansion," Lisa continued, her words tumbling out like a terrified confession. "They're going to interrogate everyone. But I can help you. I can tell them I made a mistake, that I didn't actually see anyone in the kitchen. I'm nobody. They don't care about me. I just want to survive this." It was the perfect bait, a frightened witness offering to recant, motivated purely by self-preservation. The kind of vulnerability that predators couldn't resist exploiting. Dr. Kang studied her for a long moment, and she could see him running the calculations. If his primary method had failed and they knew his identity, he had two choices: abort and try to bluff his way through interrogation, or activate the contingency and finish the job before they could move against him. "What do you want?" His voice had shifted into negotiation mode. He was buying it. "Money. New identity. Better than the one I have now." Lisa made her voice shake. "I know how this works. People like me disappear all the time in your world. I'd rather disappear rich than dead." Through her earpiece, Sun Lin's voice was deadly calm. "Security teams in position. Keep him talking." Dr. Kang's expression had transformed into something almost sympathetic. The mask of the reasonable man. The one who regretted what necessity forced him to do. "You're smarter than you look." He took a step closer, and Lisa fought every instinct to retreat. "But you made a critical error in judgment." "What's that?" "You assumed I was working alone." His hand finally withdrew from his pocket, revealing not a weapon, but a phone. His thumb moved across the screen with practiced ease. The aconite was always meant to fail. It was insurance, misdirection. The real plan activates in 3 minutes, and there's nothing you or Sun Lin or the entire Su security apparatus can do to stop it. Lisa's blood went cold. "What did you do?" "What I was paid to do." Dr. Kang's smile was the saddest thing she'd seen all night. "Huisu has already consumed the actual poison. It's in his blood right now, building to critical toxicity. The champagne spill was inconvenient, but ultimately irrelevant. He drank from a different source entirely." He held up the phone so she could see the screen. A timer counting down. 2:47, 2:46, 2:45. "The antidote exists, of course. I'm a doctor, not a monster." His voice carried false comfort. "But it's not here. It's in a secure location that only I know. And I'm afraid the price for that information has just increased substantially." Lisa's mind raced. He was lying. He had to be lying. But what if he wasn't? What if Huisu was dying right now, the real poison working through his system while they'd been focused on champagne bottles and security footage? You're bluffing. But her voice betrayed her uncertainty. Am I? Dr. Kang tilted his head, genuinely curious. Are you willing to bet Huisu's life on that assumption? Because I promise you, in approximately 2.5 minutes, the old tiger will start experiencing symptoms. Seizures first, then respiratory failure. Agonizing, I'm told. And all your clever forensics and chemical analysis won't save him. Through the earpiece, Sun Lin's voice cut through with absolute authority. He's lying. Hold position. But Dr. Kang was already backing away. Phone still visible. Timer still counting. Tell Sun Lin he has a choice. Let me walk out of here with safe passage, and I'll provide the antidote location. Or watch his father die while trying to be a hero. Lisa stood frozen in the corridor, watching him retreat, every investigative instinct screaming that something was wrong with his story but unable to pinpoint exactly what. Dr. Kang had done exactly what she'd hoped, revealed his contingency under pressure. She just hadn't expected the contingency to be this. The timer read 2:23 when Sun Lin's voice returned, colder than she'd ever heard it. Let him go. We're moving to phase 2. Dr. Kang smiled, victorious, and turned toward the service exit. He made it 3 steps before the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the corridor whole. Lisa's breath caught as emergency lighting flickered on, dim red bulbs that transformed the elegant hallway into something from a nightmare. She heard Dr. Kang curse in Korean, his footsteps suddenly uncertain on marble he could barely see. Then Sun Lin was there, materializing from the shadows like he'd been born to them. He moved with supernatural silence, positioning himself between Dr. Kang and the exit with the efficiency of a predator cutting off prey. 2 security personnel appeared behind him, blocking the opposite direction. The backup power is on a separate grid, Sun Lin's voice carried through the red-lit darkness, conversational and terrifying. One eye control. Did you really think we'd let you walk out with leverage? Dr. Kang's hand went to his jacket again, faster this time. Lisa saw the glint of metal, a syringe, she realized with ice-cold clarity, not a gun. He was a doctor even in his contingencies, preferring pharmaceutical violence to ballistic. I have the antidote location. Dr. Kang's voice had lost its false sympathy, revealing the desperation underneath. You need me alive. No. Sun Lin's correction was almost gentle. We need you talking. There's a significant difference. He nodded to his security team. They moved with choreographed precision, one producing a flashlight that pinned Dr. Kang in its beam like an insect under glass. The other held something that looked medical, a portable cardiac monitor, Lisa realized. The kind used in emergency response. You were right about one thing, Sun Lin continued, walking slowly toward Dr. Kang. My father did consume poison tonight. We confirmed it 15 minutes ago, when his personal physician ran a full panel. Traces of digoxin in his system, plant-based cardiac glycoside, slow-acting, meant to induce heart failure over several hours. Lisa's forensic mind caught the implication immediately. The tea service. Very good. Sun Lin glanced at her with something approaching approval. My father takes green tea every evening at 6:30. From a pot prepared by his personal attendant of 12 years. A woman Dr. Kang has been sleeping with for the past 8 months. Dr. Kang's face went pale in the red emergency lighting. His contingency plan was unraveling in real time, each thread pulled with surgical precision. But here's what you didn't account for. Sun Lin's voice dropped into registers that promised violence. My father has been building immunity to digoxin for the past decade. Small doses, carefully calibrated. A precaution against exactly this type of assassination. What you thought was a lethal dosage will give him an uncomfortable evening and a headache tomorrow. The timer on Dr. Kang's phone read 1:34. 1:33. 1:32. You're lying, but Dr. Kang's voice had lost conviction. The symptoms will never manifest because the poison was never going to work. Sun Lin was close enough now to touch him, close enough that Lisa could see the absolute lack of mercy in his expression. Your mistress has been in our custody since 7 o'clock. She confessed everything. The affair, the payment, the poison source. We've been watching you all night, doctor. Waiting to see if you'd actually go through with it. Lisa felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't an investigation. It was an execution with extra steps. Sun Lin had known from the beginning, had used her as bait to draw out not just Dr. Kang but his reactions, his methods, his entire network of co-conspirators. The cold room, she said quietly. The chemistry kit. You already knew about the aconite. Sun Lin didn't deny it. I needed to know who you were. Whether you were part of it or simply unlucky. Your father's daughter. Or an unrelated threat. His eyes found hers in the red-lit darkness. You proved which one. Dr. Kang made his move then. Not toward the exits, but toward Lisa. He closed the distance between them in 2 desperate strides, the syringe raised, betting everything on hostage tactics. It was the move of someone who'd run out of options and was gambling that the Sue family valued their new asset enough to negotiate. He was wrong. Lisa's body reacted before her mind caught up, 3 years of looking over her shoulder translating into muscle memory. She dropped low, away from the syringe's arc, and her hand found the champagne bottle she'd set down earlier. Evidence Sun Lin's team had left in the corridor. Her fingers closed around glass worth $400, and she swung it with every ounce of fear and fury the night had built inside her. The bottle connected with Dr. Kang's temple with a sound like a crack of thunder. He crumpled, the syringe skittering across marble, his phone spinning away to land face-up with its timer still counting. 047. 046. 045. Lisa stood over him, breathing hard, the broken bottleneck still clutched in her hand. Sun Lin's security team was already moving, securing Dr. Kang with zip ties and efficiency. But Sun Lin himself remained still, watching her with that calculating gaze. "You could have let my men handle it," he observed. "I know." Lisa dropped the broken glass, her hands shaking again. "But he came at me." That made it personal. The timer hit 0. Nothing happened. No alarms, no death, no catastrophe. Just red emergency lighting, and a failed assassin bleeding from his temple onto imported Italian marble. Sun Lin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked back at Lisa, with an expression that might have been satisfaction. "My father's physician confirms he's stable. Mild discomfort, nothing more." The immunity protocols worked exactly as designed. So what now? Lisa heard herself ask. You have your traitor. You have his accomplice. What happens to them? It was the question that mattered. The line between the world she'd left behind, where evidence led to trials and justice wore a blindfold, and the world she'd stumbled into, where justice was whatever the man with power decided it should be. Sun Lin considered her carefully, understanding the weight of what she was really asking. "That depends. Are you asking as a forensic accountant who believes in legal process, or as someone who just defended herself against a man trying to kill her?" "I'm asking as someone trying to figure out which side of the line I'm standing on." "There are no sides, Lisa. Only choices." Sun Lin gestured toward the corridor leading back to the grand hall. "We have evidence. Video footage, confession from his accomplice, the poisoned teapot, your testimony. I could turn all of it over to law enforcement. Let the justice system handle Dr. Kang and everyone connected to him." He paused, letting the implications settle. "Or I could handle it the way my family has handled betrayal for 3 generations. Quickly, quietly, permanently. No trials, no lawyers, no risk of him buying his way out, or his employers sending more assassins to silence loose ends." Lisa looked down at Dr. Kang, unconscious and bleeding. A doctor who'd perverted his oath to heal, who'd seduced a woman to gain access to his target, who'd been seconds away from injecting her with whatever was in that syringe. The law would give him lawyers, appeals, maybe even eventual freedom if his connections ran deep enough. But the Sue family would give him finality. "What would my father have chosen?" she asked quietly. Sun Lin's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Your father gave me information and trusted me to use it properly. He understood that sometimes justice requires tools the law doesn't provide." The choice hung between them like smoke. Lisa thought about 3 years of running, of hiding, of being invisible, because the legal system couldn't protect her from the people she'd exposed. Thought about Morrison and Fitch, where her mentor had committed suicide, and the embezzlement ring had buried evidence deeper than any investigation could dig. "Turn it over to the police," she heard herself say. "But not the local department. Federal jurisdiction. Financial crimes and conspiracy to commit murder. I'll testify. I'll walk them through every detail." Sun Lin studied her for a long moment, and she couldn't read whether he was disappointed or impressed. "That's the harder choice," he finally said. "It means exposure. Trial testimony. Your face in courtrooms, and federal databases. The people you've been hiding from will know exactly where to find you." "I know." Lisa met his eyes directly. "But you said your family pays its debts. My father trusted you to use information properly. I'm trusting you to keep me alive while I do the right thing." Sun Lin's smile was small, genuine, and utterly without warmth. "Then we have an arrangement." The grand hall had been restored by dawn. Champagne stains scrubbed from marble, broken crystal swept away. Guests released after extensive interviews that were really warnings wrapped in politeness. The Sue family gala that had nearly ended in assassination now existed only in security footage and sworn statements being compiled for federal prosecutors. Lisa sat in Huisu's study, the same room where he'd told her about her father, watching sunrise paint the estate grounds in shades of gold and amber. She'd been awake for 26 hours straight, running on adrenaline and terrible coffee, but her mind refused to shut down. 3 years of hiding, ended in a single night. 3 years of invisibility, shattered because someone had tripped her at exactly the wrong moment. Or exactly the right moment, depending on perspective. The door opened without knocking. Sun Lin entered carrying 2 cups of what smelled like actual good coffee, the kind that cost more per pound than Lisa used to make in a week. He set one in front of her and took the chair opposite, moving with the measured exhaustion of someone who'd spent the night coordinating crime scene documentation and federal agent briefings. Dr. Kang is in FBI custody, he said without preamble. His accomplice, my father's former attendant, is cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. They've identified the financial backer, a rival organization that wanted my father's shipping routes. The U.S. Attorney's Office is calling it the largest organized crime case they've built in a decade. Lisa wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, absorbing its warmth. And the evidence I gave them about Morrison and Fitch, also moving forward. Apparently your testimony about the embezzlement scheme connects to 3 other federal investigations they've been running into dead ends on. Sun Lin's expression held something that might have been satisfaction. The people you've been hiding from will be too busy with their own legal problems to worry about you. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Lisa just felt tired. Tired and exposed and uncertain about what came next. She'd chosen the harder path, the legal path, and now her face would be in courtroom sketches and witness testimonies. No more hiding, no more invisibility. The federal prosecutor wants me in protective custody until the trials, she said quietly. Said it could be 18 months, maybe longer. New city, new identity again, supervised housing. Is that what you want? Lisa looked up at him, this man who'd threatened her with the cold room and then handed her a chemistry kit, who'd orchestrated an elaborate trap using her as bait, who'd offered her both execution and protection in the span of a single night. I don't know what I want anymore. 3 years ago I wanted to do the right thing, and it nearly got me killed. Last night I did the right thing again, and now I'm back to hiding. She set down the coffee, suddenly too bitter. Maybe I'm not cut out for a world where doing the right thing means losing everything. Sun Lin was quiet for a long moment, studying her with that analytical gaze she'd come to recognize. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of an offer that would change everything. My father is retiring. Officially this time, the attempt on his life convinced him that 73 is too old to maintain an empire. He's transferring operational control to me effective immediately. He paused, letting that information settle, which means I need people I can trust, people who see patterns others miss, people who choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Lisa's heart rate kicked up. What are you saying? I'm saying the Su family operates in gray areas where law enforcement can't or won't reach. We deal with people who are very good at hiding their crimes behind legitimate businesses and legal protections. Sun Lin leaned forward slightly, intensity radiating from him. I'm saying we need someone who can do what you did at Morrison and Fitch. Follow the money, map the networks, identify vulnerabilities. But this time, with the full resources of an organization that values that intelligence more than quarterly profit margins. You want me to be your forensic accountant? Lisa heard the disbelief in her own voice. I want you to be my chief of intelligence. He corrected her with the precision of someone who'd thought this through completely. Not a maid who observes from the margins. Not a witness in protective custody. An actual position with actual authority. You'd have access to financial systems most law enforcement agencies can only dream about. You'd track money flows, identify threats, help us stay ahead of rivals and regulators alike. Lisa stared at him, trying to process the enormity of what he was offering. You're asking me to work for the Korean Mafia. I'm asking you to work with a family that pays its debts and protects its people. Sun Lin's voice remained steady, non-judgmental. Yes, we operate outside legal boundaries. But we also maintain order in spaces where law can't function. We prevent wars, stop human trafficking operations that compete with legitimate businesses, eliminate threats that police can't touch because of jurisdiction or corruption. That's a rationalization. It's reality. He didn't flinch from her assessment. You spent 3 years serving champagne to monsters because the legal system couldn't protect you from people who'd committed crimes you'd documented. You chose testimony and trials last night, which I respect. But ask yourself, in 18 months when the trials end, where will you be? Still hiding? Still invisible? Still running? Lisa thought about it, really thought about it. The federal prosecutor had been kind, professional, grateful for her cooperation. But she'd also been clear-eyed about the risks. Witness protection wasn't a guarantee of safety, just a reduction of probability. And after the trials, after the sentences, Lisa would still be alone with a false identity and a skill set she couldn't use without drawing attention. What would my father think? She asked quietly, echoing the question from the night before. Your father understood that sometimes you have to trust monsters to fight monsters. Sun Lin's voice softened, almost imperceptibly. He gave me information that saved American lives by putting it in the hands of someone who could act without congressional oversight or jurisdictional red tape. He trusted me to do what needed doing. And you want me to make the same choice? I want you to make your own choice. Sun Lin stood, buttoning his jacket with the gesture of someone preparing to return to the endless demands of running an empire. The federal prosecutor's offer stands. Protective custody, testimony, 18 months of supervised invisibility. It's a reasonable path, and I'll ensure you have the best possible security during that time regardless of your decision. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. But if you want to stop running, if you want to use your mind the way it was meant to be used, if you want protection that doesn't come with an expiration date. He pulled something from his pocket and set it on the desk between them. A business card. Heavy stock. Embossed with a crane in flight. My father said you were sent here for a reason. Maybe that reason is bigger than champagne and testimony. Lisa picked up the card. On the back, handwritten in elegant script, was a single line. Chief of Intelligence, Sioux Family Enterprises. The position comes with a salary that would make your Morrison & Fitch paycheck look like pocket change. Private security. A real identity you don't have to hide. And problems that will challenge every analytical skill you possess. Sun Lin's smile was slight, genuine. Think about it. You have until the federal prosecutor files the initial motions, roughly 72 hours. He left, closing the door with a soft click that felt ceremonial. Lisa sat alone in Huisu's study, watching dawn paint the world in new colors, holding a business card that represented everything she'd never imagined wanting. 3 years ago, she'd run from an empire of corruption. Last night, she'd helped stop an assassination, using the same skills that had made her a target. And now she was being offered a position in an organization that operated in the spaces between law and chaos. She thought about her father, trusting a Korean mob boss with information that could have gotten him killed. Thought about Huisu, surviving assassination because Lisa had accidentally spilled champagne at exactly the right moment. Thought about Sun Lin, offering her not protection or pity, but purpose. The business card felt heavier than it should. A new uniform, Sun Lin had said. Not a maid's apron, but something else entirely. Lisa looked at the card for a long moment, then pulled out her phone and dialed the number embossed on the front. Sun Lin answered on the first ring. I have conditions, she said. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I'd testify at the trials regardless. Full cooperation with federal prosecutors. Non-negotiable. Agreed. I won't participate in anything that involves harming innocents. I don't care how you rationalize it. I won't be part of operations that cross that line. Reasonable. Continue. Lisa took a breath, committing to the choice even as part of her screamed that it was insane. And I want quarterly audits of Sioux family finances. Full transparency. If I'm going to be your intelligence chief, I need to know exactly what I'm protecting. Sun Lin's laugh was quiet, surprised, genuine. You're going to be a nightmare to work with, aren't you? Probably. Good. The position is yours, Chief Williams. Welcome to the family. The call ended. Lisa set down the phone and looked at her reflection in the window, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Not invisible anymore. Not running. Something else entirely. The sun had fully risen, painting the Sioux estate in brilliant morning light. Somewhere in the mansion, Huisu was having breakfast, alive because his son had prepared for betrayal, and his new intelligence chief had spilled champagne at exactly the right moment. Lisa stood, straightened her ruined uniform one last time, and walked toward whatever came next. The weight of the tray was finally gone. Thanks for watching. Please like, comments, and subscribe for more.